In this short symbols and sound play video, you're going to witness a young man's journey, and a real shout out to him, a young man's journey exploring his flatness. He came in and his body language was suggesting he was a bit down, and invited him to do some symbols and sound play work surrounding the experience of this depression. And unbeknownst to him, he come across the inner judge, that really harsh, critical part of himself that we've all got. Sometimes we can have it in loads, unfortunately. He was able to also reconnect to the happy-go-lucky self, which he shares in figurine form. It's a great way to externalise, to capture that energy of our happy self inside. And also we're able to invite him to reassure himself. What did that energy, what symbol look like? And we all need reassurance, and us men, we didn't get it from a lot of our fathers. Sometimes we did, but a lot of times they were a little bit critical from, unfortunately, the toxic masculinity that they were also part of. If you relate to this video, please give it the thumbs up, make a comment, let us know. It's really important that we men begin to share and talk, openly talk about this stuff, so we can improve our emotional well-being and mental health. I hope you do get something out of it. In this sand tray work, the person I was working with came in fairly flat, and we used the symbol to define how it felt, and his body language was very slumped in the process. And as he was in this space, we had a conversation, and his self-esteem is a bit down, and it's a bit unfortunate that that's how he's feeling. And he said it's quite familiar, and because he did feel like that, we then looked at, well, do you judge it? And he then talked about judging it, and we brought in this symbol that's quite a strong judge, and then invited him to, how does he armour that up? And he used the night to armour that up. And we sat here for some period of time, experiencing the dialogue that goes on inside himself when this dynamic is present within his being, within his psyche. And he does get really angry with himself, and the judge in the back, that golden figurine, can be the judge. The knight is the armouring up to shut it all down. The judge can be very external too. What we judge outside, we can also internally judge ourselves, and it's doing some very serious, harsh judging. And as we worked through this, we just sat present to it, and we stayed with the dialogue and felt into the dynamic, and yes, it's a very familiar dynamic. And then I shared a reflective question back and said, where's the great soul of you, that easygoing, happy-go-lucky part of you, that he'd take his shirt off, he'd give his shirt off his back to another person, that beautiful, gentle soul that you can be. And he thought about that for a moment, and in the process he then chose this symbol, Shrek. And Shrek is the happy-go-lucky, lovely character, lovely figurine, and he is a very happy-go-lucky. And when he placed that symbol down, when it was placed on the table, normally it's in a sand tray, but when he placed it in, there was a totally different affect in his body. His body started to lift up, and you could see the smile and to see the happiness, and that's there. And it was really quite powerful to experience that. But then there's the dynamic that keeps coming and going, and this dynamic is that when he's down, he then he starts putting the boot into himself, and the ability to capture that happy-go-lucky sense of self is sort of drowned out by these horrendous, tough-looking inner critics, full of judgment. To armour up takes... I'd hate to be a knight in the old days carrying all that armour around. It would have been hard work to protect. And that can then overpower the ability to feel that happy-go-lucky Shrek character that typifies his great soul, his easygoing mind. And when we continued on in the conversation, it was really powerful to then inquire, well, what does that figurine, that sad fetal position, feeling really down, what does it need? And, where did this criticism come from? Where did this booting come from? And unfortunately, it's quite common for us men that, our fathers are trying to do the right thing. It's that old, masculinity that, some of it's quite toxic. That masculinity where we're trying to do the right thing by our sons and say, right, you've got to man up, you've got to get out there and, survive in the world, which is correct, but it's the delivery of it that can be internalized as perpetual criticism. And in asking that and learning that, he's learnt to, when he's down, he also now puts the boot in. And Shrek then doesn't, that beautiful soul, that happy-go-lucky soul, that effervescent soul that's, there he is. He's not able to shine out all. He's sort of, he's caught up in all this dynamic. And it seems for sometimes when we've got that depressive affect or that beat-up self or, we're putting ourselves down when we're not coping, we tend to lose sight of that. But in asking and inquiring about, well, what does that need? What did it want from your father? And so this figurine was then placed in that, this is that loving relationship, that reassurance, that comfort, that strength, that beautiful spirit masculinity that our fathers do have and we have as men. That there, placing that there, was enabling to how can I work at reassuring myself in this space? Instead of giving the negative messages, can I associate, bring in the happy-go-lucky self? Can I give myself gentle, caring messages rather than the negative criticism, which keeps perpetuating the flatness? And in that moment, it was really powerful to watch the energy, the experience in the body. And I think for men, and the experience for men is that, we do need to reframe and relearn a lot of things that we do. Instead of when we are down and not coping, it's how do we adult ourselves? How do we be the parent that we wanted to have? And I think for a lot of men, the person that we want the most admiration from and the most love from is our father. And unfortunately, I'm wondering whether through our experiences that hasn't been forthcoming. It's the sort of the old story of hard love. And the final part to this process was bringing in what are called the bringing in of the spirit warrior. This spirit warrior is the deep inner wisdom. And ultimately I have the little figurine down there because, yes, our fathers were right, that we do need to learn to be able to manage in the world and cope in the world. That by developing and connecting to that deep inner wisdom, that deep power within ourselves, it maybe makes life more bearable. This is the deep surrendering, the powerful surrendering, the letting go, the connection, our connection to all that is. And sometimes I use the aha moments to describe where everything lines up in our psyche, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And this dude at the back, this beautiful, powerful inner wisdom, the spirit warrior, he's not going to harm the vulnerable self that when we're depressed, when we're not coping, we can get very depressed. But instead of putting the boots in, instead of doing all the judging, is, what messages might he have for us? Those messages, I would imagine, come from deep within us at a deep soul level. And learning to connect to this is not easy. Shrek is maybe the happy-go-lucky part of our ego. But he has bad days. He's not always going to be happy-go-lucky. But instead, when we're not happy-go-lucky, how do we then default to this? Do we then start getting critical of ourselves and judging ourselves? And how do we parent ourselves? How do we father ourselves, that essence of ourself? What we wanted back then, what we most wanted back then, was the appropriate affirmations, the appropriate acknowledgement. Yes, sometimes we do need to be ticked off and critiqued, but it's how it was critiqued, the energy, the tone of voice. And with a lot of that toxic masculinity, the advice was good advice, but man, was it loaded. And you can sort of see that now. And it's how do we bring these visual memory, how do we then take that? And what happens a lot of the times, I invite the person I've worked with to take a photo, place this on your phone and come back to it, to start to reconnect to the different aspects of ourselves. And the idea is that the more we reconnect, if we start placing these things here in front of those, I'm wondering what sort of protection that will give us, that internal protection that we do need in that point in time. And how do we listen? How do we hear the voice of that inner wisdom, that powerful voice, that spirit warrior that does exist within us and men? That spirit warrior has a spirit rock masculinity, not a toxic masculinity. And learning to feel, to connect into these different aspects of our psyche, they're there. In this process, we're externalizing it, we're putting it out there, and we're giving voice to it through the process of a therapy technique called voice dialogue. And I hope this video, these symbols have shared a story, this person's story, in his inner journey. Okay, I hope you got something from that video. It was a really good outcome, and it was great to experience that with the young fellow. Then there was a real positivity that he was able to take away, and it was just to watch the energy came in flat, and it was really powerful because what he was able to do is to really capture the different aspects of himself that are circulating inside that we blokes, we just can't put, we can't connect the dots to that stuff, but he was able to connect the dots to it. Look, if you got something out of it, you related to it, please make a comment, get some professional help. Again, now I need to bring in this, give the thumbs up to it, please. And we'd really be grateful if you could subscribe. We want to build up a therapeutic library for men, a video library for men, so they can access it in their own time and in their own privacy. And maybe they too can relate. So a real shout out to this guy and to the other men. I'm really, really, really pleased and honoured that you have given me permission to share your story in Symbols and Sound Play form.